Hi, and welcome to City Desk, a behind-the-scenes look at Santa Barbara's top local news headlines. I'm your host, Jerry Roberts. Tonight, from high atop the palatial headquarters of TV Santa Barbara, we'll look at these headlines. Local families make emergency preparedness plans as Donald Trump's immigration policies hit home. Sanctuary school advocates spread the word about the rights all students have, regardless of Trump. Community outrage over Obamacare repeal soars as Congress mulls President Hairboy's so-called bill. And the City Council hears marathon testimony about rent regulation as the vacancy rate nears zero. Joining me tonight, Kelsey Bruger, National Affairs Correspondent for the Santa Barbara Independent. Laura Capps, Santa Barbara School Board member and alt-progressive thought leader. Nick Welsh, executive editor and perennial also-ran columnist at The Independent. And Tyler Hayden, indie news editor and hardest working man in show business. Thank you all for coming. Well, Kelsey, you drew the short straw this week. You had like the saddest making assignment ever. You were covering, I guess, a workshop put on by some immigrant rights groups for undocumented people who might have to flee suddenly. What did you see?
Right, so they're on Monday evenings at Immigrant Hope, which is a nonprofit that offers legal services for undocumented people. They had a workshop. There have been a handful of these workshops in the last couple of weeks, and there were about 10 people there who were all drafting these plans, or kind of in the beginning process of creating emergency plans in case they are deported and their, for instance, U.S.-born child stays here. So, there are just an endless number of things that you wouldn't, unless you're in that position, even think about. What happens if you've been working and you need someone to go pick up your paycheck, or what if there's money in your bank account and you need someone to be able to access it? What about your child if there's not a guardianship or someone in place for them to take them in, then they could end up in foster care. So
some of these folks were like deciding, do I take my kids or do I leave my kids with someone else?
That was certainly a question. People asking, what about dual citizenship? Do you recommend that? And for people who want to take, if they were deported and if they wanted to take their child to Mexico, for instance, with them, then they said, yes, you certainly should, because that could be several benefits for your child, university or healthcare, et cetera. So people, asking questions and, not necessarily making any decisions. They have some time, but the advocates there are saying, right now we have some planning time, but, if it does happen that ICE goes en masse, starts detaining people, then it could be too late, and you need to have these plans ready to go.
Horrible, the lady who said, she wondered if she was going to have to leave her kids by the side of the road.
Right, and I think it just those kind of images really demonstrates the fear that's happening in the immigrant community right now. And there were only 10 people at this workshop, and I think that really illustrated that people are afraid. And someone specifically raised her hand and said, I know I have friends who want to come, but they're afraid to leave their house after dark.
Come to the
workshop. Yeah.
Yeah, they're probably thinking that might be where they get deported at a workshop. Why not?
Didn't someone say people have been tricked a few years ago?
Yeah,
supposedly?
Someone raised their hand and said, a few years ago they said that there were going to be prizes, and they showed up and there were ICE agents. So I don't know that that's true, or wasn't able to confirm that, but that's certainly a story that's out there and being shared.
And then you've talked before about in the schools how parents are afraid to come to parent-teacher conferences or PTA meetings.
Yeah, it's really two things. It's the undocumented students themselves, but then also there's a statistic out there that there's 800,000 kids in California, that one of which have a parent who is undocumented. So you think about those students having to come to school with these deportation plans of what happens if my my mom or my dad is deported while I'm at school. And we're hearing anecdotally at the school district about those kind of plans being put into place so that while kids are at school, they know what to do in case that were to happen. But schools are supposed to be so-called sensitive areas, along with churches, along with
Meaning what?
meaning that ICE is not supposed to be on anywhere near a school campus, and that's the policy.
What happened a couple weeks ago when in LA,
Yeah.
ICE
Yeah,
picked up
yeah, I know.
somebody just having dropped their kid off?
Right.
What was the repercussion here?
I mean, apparently they said he was wanted for a DUI, and so there was that sort of justification of the urgency. But see, that's what's striking fear in everybody, and it's really horrendous. It's really destabilizing. And if you also look at the economics of how destabilizing this would be, I was just reading about how if these deportations were to take impact, it would be like a $5 trillion loss over the next decade. So. And you think about our own local economy. If we are to lose the undocumented immigrants or their families, it will have a real impact.
And what about, is there, there's a lot of rumors and so on in the community, bad rumors, bad information? What are you guys hearing
I think
about that?
it was only a couple weeks ago that we were getting calls that there was a checkpoint on Las Positas.
Right.
And then we heard that there had been a big raid at Foodland. And so we periodically hear those kinds of things, and we haven't been able to verify any checkpoints like that or big sweeps. But that's not to say that there aren't arrests being made, sort of more targeted individual arrests. There's an effort by a gentleman at Cause, immigrants' rights.
Read all about it.
Yeah.
This is the Indies' latest great effort here.
And Nick interviewed
anti-Trump.
Frank Rodriguez,
It's mostly thanks to Tyler because
it was
got
all of us.
turn all this into English. I'm sorry.
But Nick interviewed Frank Rodriguez, who's trying to spearhead an effort to actually cut through sort of the rumors and the hysteria to figure out when these arrests are actually happening. Because there are ICE vans around here. You hear about the white ICE vans circling every once in a while, and I have no doubt that that's true. But it's hard to get a true read on exactly when that's happening.
Like with Facebook, it just
Yeah.
the rumors go. And so you had mentioned some of these, like on Valentine's Day, Milpas was a ghost town because nobody was buying flowers because ICE had come in, and 14 people were arrested and taken off at Winchell's, and none of those turned out to be true.
That was not true.
It was not true.
No.
But it's true that the West Side businesses are there's fall off, is there not?
Yeah.
And the neighborhood clinics, apparently.
Oh, the
and I saw
neighborhood-
a PBS story nationally, but with some California examples that immigrants are scared to go to the doctor.
Well, like I talked to Chuck Fenzi, head of the neighborhood clinics, and he said that in February their visits were down by about 150, and normally they're up about 300 from the previous year. So it's like 450 fewer visits they're getting, coincidentally. Now maybe it's the rain, but probably not the rain. 450 is a whole lot of people not to be showing up because they're sick.
Yep.
So, and now is this series of workshops continuing, or what's?
It is, and so there are various efforts. There's also Legal Aid Foundation is also putting some on, I believe. There are events on the 24th and the 28th.
And then Cause is having a big one on April 1st, all day at La Costa de la Raza. So
Okay.
good.
All right. Now, Laura Capps, you, a graduate of the University of California at All Rise, Berkeley, have tremendous research skills, and you have researched, in fact, a 1982 Supreme Court, United States of the Supreme Court decision known as
Plyer versus Doe,
Plyer versus Doe. Remember that.
which stated that all students in this country are entitled to an education, and specifically called out even the undocumented immigrants. So that's why schools are and should be a safe place where all students are welcome to have the education that they deserve.
So attorneys are using this case to preemptively act against any attempts by ICE to come on campus?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I understand, it's ICE. It's not the policy of ICE is not changed. Schools should be a so-called sensitive place, along with doctors' offices and churches. But it doesn't prevent rumors from happening, and hopefully these protocols don't change either in the future.
And who's going to pick Peter Adams' crops, I wonder? I mean, that's a serious issue. I mean, getting the crops picked.
Robots.
Mm-hmm. Robots. If you ask him, he thinks that if we discontinue welfare,
Supervisor
This
Peter,
is-
Peter Adams, world's worst mustache. I'm sorry, go on.
right, his comment is that there are too many people in California on welfare, so if we kicked them off, then they'd be required to get a job, and they would take what they could get, and that would maybe be in the fields.
That's a plan. Jesus.
And we should note that this deportation costs $6 billion, so you're really getting hit twice.
Without the wall.
Right,
Sans wall.
right.
Which is what, another 20, 30 billion? Something like that. But I note that there are localities, San Francisco, no surprise, which are going to refuse to do business with construction companies which bid on the wall.
Oh,
So that's kind of a new, anti-apartheid something.
Sure.
I don't know if that'll work or not. What else are you hearing about immigration? You've been doing a lot of work on this issue.
Let's see. Lately, well, yeah, the workshops was sort of the big one this week. What else have we been tracking?
The ICE detainer report that they issued.
Oh yeah,
Oh, I know,
Yeah,
Sheriff
big
Bill
one.
Brown.
that's a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me,
So
somebody tell me.
That was just pretty bizarre because, I think that was the first thing that shocked a lot of people in law enforcement who, we've heard a lot of rumors, we've heard a lot of fear about Trump's immigration policies, but to see this report,
And what was the report?
so this report detailed counties in the country.
This is
that-
from Homeland Security, right?
This is from ICE, so Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and it listed counties that refused to hold inmates after their case had been adjudicated, which is against the law in California. So, presumably every single county in California will eventually be on this list. This report only covers a week, beginning January 28th, and it's going to be updated every week. So next week we're going to see 6 weeks ago, and it's when ICE. It's pretty confusing and it's pretty
Well, simplify it
convoluted.
for us, if you would.
Well, I think a lot of people are just sort of like, what
So
is
basically,
this?
the Sheriff Bill Brown gets called out by the feds for not
For not
cooperating
detaining
with
this
ICE,
Right,
guy who
right,
was
for-
for fraud.
but it was a
for
bad rap on
Forgery.
Right. So upon talking to ICE further, they explained that this forgery conviction, it's not necessarily the most recent conviction. It's just that's the most serious crime.
Where did the report? How did you get your hands on it, or how did we see it?
She's
to begin
a
with?
mostly fair reporter.
Was it published
Yeah, it was
publicly
published. Yeah.
by them?
Right,
they
by
released
them.
it. It was
Yeah,
like a
they
bomb
released
they
this.
dropped.
Yeah, and said this is the beginning of us detailing our new efforts. And so, I spoke to an ICE agent today, and she said, "Look, we've been getting a lot of feedback, and
Oh, really? You must have a fun job.
Response. Some good dialogue.
so they might be updating their process based on that information. So, I think if you're Bill Brown, and he didn't say this, he said the most he said to me was, "I was a little taken aback by this." I'd imagine he's not too happy because he has, as far as I understand, bent over backwards to cooperate with ICE. He allows Bill Brown, he allows them to come into the jail. He lets them look at databases. He allows them to interview foreign-born inmates. If ICE requests him to hold an inmate longer than their local sentence, he doesn't do that because that's against the law in California, but he will notify an ICE agent when that they're going to be released so that they can come and detain them themselves. If they can't get there in time, then that's on them. He doesn't hold them, but he'll tell them when he's going to let them go.
Which is why he's going to be in a lot of trouble with all the people that you write about
Yeah,
this
right.
week.
Well, they've been hounding him, I think, pretty hard for a while now, and trying to get sort of a clear picture of how many times ICE comes into the jail, how many arrests are made, and how many deportations come from that. The numbers are pretty squishy and tricky to come by as far as frequency and volume. And I was curious though if any sheriffs in California have held anyone past their local senates to make a stand against the Trust Act.
Right, and what has happened
Yeah,
then.
like if they've if
I
anybody's tried
talked
that.
to him about that, and he said he didn't.
I
he
think the
didn't
guy in
so.
Fresno has said that he would do it. The Fresno
Oh,
County
He would do
Sheriff,
it?
Yeah, he's a real gem, and the mayor of Fresno as well.
Well, what we did find out just, was it today or yesterday, is that ICE comes not just to get people out of jail, but let's say you get arrested for a lesser offense and you're allowed to do community service. You show up at the jail to sign off saying, "Yeah, I did my hours," and when you come to sign off, when you're through doing that, what did we find? Like a dozen people, at least that we know of, have been.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't know the time frame on that, when those doesn't happen, but essentially what ICE says is, just because you're coming to do your community service or alternative sentencing or electronic monitoring and you're checking in with the jail, that could be a lesser offense. So you could have
Some heavy duty.
you could have a record, is what they're claiming. But it's still very squishy because it's exactly like Tyler said, the numbers of, okay, has there been an increase in detainer requests, since
Yeah.
And I mean, on the at the city level too, we heard recently that they are refusing to tell city police when they come in to do arrests. They can tell local jurisdictions as sort of a professional courtesy. We're going to be wherever, so that there's not sort of confusion. But I guess they have specifically told our police department, we're not going to tell you even if you ask.
Well,
And
the
she
Trump,
did ask.
Trump is very
And
big.
she's
for it.
asked. She's flown out.
She
and
asked.
asked. Yeah,
Always
yeah.
asked.
Because I mean, that was on the after there was reports coming out of LA, and it's happened here too, of ICE identifying themselves as police when they knock on doors, which is, they say, the universal term for law enforcement. But you could argue it's a little bit of a ruse for people to open the door for what they think are local cops, which more often than not they have a better relationship with than ICE.
Well, fortunately, we here in Santa Barbara have a lion in Washington in the form of Representative Salud Carbajal, no less a figure, who's going to put an end to all this. But meanwhile, he's being hailed as a hero for his opposition to the Republican Trump effort to roll back Obamacare.
Search and destroy.
What's been going on with that?
Yeah, today is the 7th anniversary of the signing
March
of
23rd.
Obamacare. March 23rd. By the time you see this, the facts will all be completely different, and this will all be obsolete.
You can pretty much say that about anything that you write, isn't it?
Not quite as fast.
Go ahead. I'll find something.
Anyway, so today,
Just keep
Yeah.
talking.
yeah, keep talking. Yeah, today the repeal and replace bill that Trump and the Republicans had hoped would be voted on got punted because last-minute compromises with the Conservative Freedom Caucus proved insufficient to get their support. So at this point, the bill that we thought was going
Well,
to...
they weren't making it onerous enough.
They weren't making it onerous enough. So Trump had already said, okay, every insurance policy under the Affordable Care Act is supposed to have 10 essential ingredients. The 10 herbs and spices that say, maternity care, mental health care,
And so on.
and so on. The Republican conservatives say, this is too onerous, this isn't going to work, we need to have flexibility. So the latest plan is that's off the table. We're going to, so when you sign up for an insurance policy, you don't know what's going to, the insurance companies will have flexibility is the magic word in terms of which of these services they're going to provide. And they're supposed to make it cheaper. That will not fly in the Senate. It won't be legal under the current way the game is being played in the Senate. So it's dead on arrival in the Senate, assuming it ever even gets that far. But that's the deal that Paul Ryan wanted to have, and it fell through today.
But we like that. We like
We-
the fact that that's falling.
That's good.
I speak royal we, of
There's a
course.
Pope.
Yeah,
There's
speaking
the
for
papal we.
the people of the
The people
city
that-
and
yeah.
county of Santa Barbara.
You can speak for me on that.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you very much.
Everyone at the table.
So,
So Salud
Salud's
Carvajal's
happy.
a Democrat, and every Democrat voted no. They're not a single Democrat's going to support this. So Salud is, he held a big town hall forum on Monday. 400 people showed up last Monday, excuse me. 400 people showed up. It was standing room only at the Natural History Museum, which has a pretty good sized auditorium. People were spilling out in the back. You had a pretty impressive array of medical experts there. You had Charity Dean, the county health officer. You had everybody there except for Cottage Hospital and Sansom Clinic, but you had the head of the Medical Association, all sort of testifying.
This is a bad thing.
As to the violence that this was actually going to inflict on Santa Barbara.
Here's what I worry about. So and it's all this stuff. There's people are being scared away or whatever. So somebody has tuberculosis, so they're not going to go to a clinic because they might get arrested. And anyway, they probably wouldn't get treated. They don't have any insurance anyway. Then we're all going to have tuberculosis.
Right.
And we're going to be in reruns forever. I mean, this.
And ironically, the Trump healthcare plan most helps sort of the typical Hillary Clinton affluent young
Yes.
Right.
voter and hurts the Trump voters.
It hurts the Trump
most.
voters the most.
Yeah.
But here's what I don't understand. This is a serious question. Okay, you're what I would call a veteran Washington hand. Okay, so there are these Republican plans.
Yes.
Not this particular awful stinky bill, but there are other ones that at least allege to make a serious effort to deal with health care in the U.S. Are the people who are putting those together genuinely concerned about this? Because, we all tend to sort of write them all off as, they want to harm women and children and do everything, which they do. But are there serious ideas on the other side?
Yeah, even in the budget committee where Salud sits, I read this in your piece, that there was an amendment, a Republican amendment, to switch the tax breaks to the middle class within the bill. So, sure, there's people trying to forge some compromise. And I think that there are some serious healthcare experts, and especially the staff, who are not ideological. They might be Republican, working for Republican members, but they really care about healthcare. Absolutely.
The thing has been steamrolled so fast, and it's such a complicated thing. You're talking, healthcare in the United States is $3.2 trillion operation. That is bigger than the gross national product of all the countries in the world except for Germany, Japan, and China.
You just had that.
Wow.
Careful.
My goodness. He's getting ready.
Let's get an AIR before you do that again.
Okay.
So, it's
I heard that Nick just got a big fellowship to UNC to study health policies. Is that true?
I just came out. But so,
Are you all right? I apologize.
I love it. I love the exuberance.
so you have no.
How much was that? You have 1 minute.
Okay.
And tell us everything you learned.
And 1 minute. Right here, it's killing me. So in the latest version, they accidentally, included language that would deny 7 million American veterans any of the tax breaks in the Trump Republican bill. So they have tax breaks there to help subsidize insurance. So if you were a veteran, and there's 7 million in the United States, you can't have this. This was an accidental oops. They just somehow slipped into it. And they're rushing so fast to try to get something done by the 7th magic anniversary date,
Which they missed.
that these huge mistakes are in there. They don't even want that in there. And so the craftsmanship and the thought is just, nobody has actually seen the bill. There hasn't been one hearing.
So Trump says, okay, so Pat, and of course, we'll be bypassed by history by the time it's now, but I'm just curious. So Trump says, okay, pass it tomorrow or I'm done. I'm done with health care.
Yeah, or you're going to get stuck with Obamacare.
What's the impact of that?
It's a pretty bold move. From a guy who that's what he does, right? But I don't know. That Republican caucus, that House caucus doesn't like to be told what to do. It's called the locker room. I don't know. We'll see what the impact is. But I'd be surprised.
And as you
if
point
they
out, the
report.
picture of all the men.
Yeah, I love the
Oh,
picture.
yeah.
People should check it out of the House Freedom Caucus meeting at the White House. There was not a single female, either in the staff of the president's team or it's probably like 30 men talking about healthcare, which by the way impacts women and also stripping Planned Parenthood, of course, and all
But
that.
Kellyanne Conway will be out tonight telling us why that's okay. All right, now we turn to our new feature. The big
Wait,
question.
no,
Oh,
What?
him. He got
his credit.
the rent.
The rent stuff?
Oh, shoot. I forgot about the rent stuff.
That's okay.
I knew we had too much time. All right, quickly. Landlords won, renters nothing. Nick's pretty excited about this. He thinks it's historic. How do you respond?
Yes. So on Tuesday night there was a marathon hearing at City Hall. I'll try to kind of break it down. There's a menu of options on the table to create this sort of these tenant protections. So rent regulation, as you said, just cause evictions, mandatory leases, and mandatory inspections, and then actual rent control. And it was up for discussion. There was going to be no major decision made, but what was maybe more interesting than what was going on sort of at the policy level was the dynamic at City Hall, because there's hundreds of people there. The chambers were filled by landlords who had arrived early and sort of staked out their seats, and there was a lot of people saving seats with water bottles and scarves, and no, you can't sit here, you can't sit there. And they sort of dominated the public speaking portion of the hearing for a long time to talk about how onerous these protections would be, and how tenants need to suck it up in a lot of ways, and that they're great landlords, and it was pretty striking. And then later in the evening, the tenants themselves finally got a turn to speak, and they had the exact opposite.
But they just took rent control off the table.
They did, and rent control was sort of the bait to get all those landlords there. It was pretty.
But it was in the.
It was one of 5 options that was there. But it didn't seem like it was ever going to be a serious
It
contender.
was never
It
on
seemed
the
like a
table.
grab.
It was sort of like you go to a restaurant, there's a $900 bottle of wine, nobody orders it. And that was what rent control was.
Mr. History is.
Do you think it was a tactical error to have included it?
Well, they didn't do it. Actually, rent control was put on that laundry list by Ariel Kalan, the city attorney. It was his decision
Oh.
to do it, and he was asked to put together a laundry list, and we'll look it over. And so,
Oh, interesting.
and to be comprehensive, he included it.
All right.
Okay.
The upshot is that the council voted to create a task force to look at it, and they actually will enhance the rental mediation task force that already exists before lawyers get called in during disputes.
All right, we'll be back in a couple of weeks, actually for a couple of years, and Tyler will bring us up to date on what's going on in the task force, and his coverage of it will be in a bound volume at the end. Thank you so much. We'll have that big question for you next time when I remember to do all of the stories before we close. And check us out on Facebook, SB City Desk, or our new Twitter account, SB City Desk. Good night.